Welcome to Canadian Justice. I'm Christine Van Gyn, and today we're talking about in vitro fertilization, surrogacy, and the laws surrounding fertility in Canada. Thousands of Canadian families seek help every year with fertility treatments. Across the country, there are 35 fertility clinics that perform roughly 20,000 cycles of fertility treatment each year. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 6 people struggle with fertility, and these medical interventions can make the dream of having a child come true for many families. But what laws govern these procedures, from IVF to egg and embryo freezing to surrogacy? Here today to discuss this are two experts, Sara Cohen and Jay Moch. Thank you both so much for joining me today. First, let's talk about the different fertility treatments available. Sara, I mentioned IVF, egg and embryo freezing, as well as surrogacy. What do people need to know about these treatments? And is there anything to add to that list?
There's a few more things to add to that list. So, gamete donation, gamete's a fancy way of saying ova and sperm, and then embryo donation. And then there's some, perhaps a little bit of less interventionist. So, for example, IUI. And then actually, a lot of people are engaged in certain things like sperm donation at home. So, even outside of a medical setting.
And Jay, how are these treatments and procedures regulated in Canada? Is there a national regulation, national law, or does it differ depending on the province, or are there kind of overlapping jurisdictional claims here?
So the federal law is the Assisted Human Reproduction Act, and that regulates everyone across Canada, both individuals and clinics providing this type of care. Within the regulation is the safety of sperm and ova regulations, which set out a laundry list of safety mechanisms put in place by the federal government to ensure that the process is run smoothly for Canadians, and it is done in association with Health Canada.
Now, I'm interested in each of these different procedures. Was kind of zoom in on each one. When it comes to freezing eggs or even freezing embryos, what legal rights do individuals, like do individual women have over frozen eggs, or couples have over frozen embryos? What laws kind of govern that and what they can do with them, Sarah?
So great question. It's actually perhaps a little bit confusing. So as Jay was mentioning, we have the Assisted Human Reproduction Act, and within that, there are very specific laws about whose consent has to be used before a clinic can make use of an egg, sperm, or embryo. And an embryo, just for people who aren't clear, is when an egg is fertilized with sperm. So it's already created. They're not separate anymore. And if it's your egg, you can have consent over your egg. If it's your sperm, consent over your sperm. But once you actually make an embryo, it's really, really strict, the law. And if it's two people who were a couple at the time that they were made and they're using their own gametes, then it has to be the consent of both people, no matter if they're still together as a couple at the time that they want to make use of the embryo or not. It's different though if you use donor egg or donor sperm and the other person's genetically related to the embryo. And what happens there is if people divorce or separate, then only the person who's genetically related to the embryo can make use of it. And this is really problematic. I see especially with women who've to some extent kind of aged out of having really viable eggs, because if it's a heteronormative couple, they divorce and it's the ex-husband and wife's sperm and egg that were used to make the embryo. Well, she's out of luck if he doesn't let her make use of that embryo, and she might not be able to create more.
Wow, that's really interesting. Jay, is there anything you want to add there in about 30 seconds?
Yeah, it's a very interesting area of law, and it has developed over time with the main focus being on the consent regulations. However, there are a few cases where they have, in situations where neither party is genetically related, such as a sperm donation, there are cases where they essentially treat the sperm when it is not created into an embryo as property. So it does create very interesting nuances in law where there's a lot of overlap in different areas.
Yeah, certainly. These are things a lot of people don't consider when they think about their family planning. We've got to go to commercial break now, but we will be right back.